everybody. Welcome to the Catching Up After College podcast. We're catching up after college on the lessons of life led by leaders. We're a safe space grounded in grace, and our aim's always to aid. We may be post-graduation, but we're never post-education. I'm Isaiah Brown, your host, and thank you for tuning in today. Anyway, today we have the brilliant Bryony with us. How's it going?
Hey, Isaiah. How's it going?
Pretty good. I'm just chilling. Yeah. What are you up to?
Amazing. Pretty much the same. I mean, we're on lockdown. There's not too much to do after 8 p.m.
Mm-hmm. Dang, and you're on New York time. It looks really sunny still. It's like 7.
Yeah, you know what? It's like the days are feeling long right now, but we have a curfew, so we're actually not allowed to go outside after 8 p.m. So
Whoa.
weird times, but just for safety and everything going on in the world right now, we are just, hermiting at home, making the most of it.
Yeah. Cool. I think it'd be good to get to know you a bit better. So you're from?
I'm from Canada, actually.
Awesome. What part?
I'm raised in Toronto, and then a little bit in Montreal as well. So we're kind of a 50-50 there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to do 3 sets of your top 3 different Canadian categories, if that's cool with you. If
Oh,
you're down for that.
yeah, let's do it.
Okay, here we go. So what's your top 3 authentic Canadian food or beverages?
Oh my goodness, I should know this. Um, okay, we do this dessert called an Nanaimo bar. It's specific to Ontario. So shout out to the Canadians listening who know that. Also a huge fan of probably anything maple, honestly. I love everything maple. And then you can't say anything other than poutine as well. So that's a definite go-to. I love a good poutine. We call that a heart attack on a plate. So definitely not healthy, but it's so addictive.
Yeah, that's like fries with something on it or something.
Yeah, it's like chips with gravy and cheese curds. So
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
not the healthiest, but it's good.
Yeah. Whoa. Okay. Well, what's your top 3 must-do activities while in Canada?
Ooh, I'm all about going to Canada in the winter. Snowshoeing, skiing, skating, all must-dos. Anywhere like deep in nature where there's lots of snow, it's really cold. I feel like that's the Canadian experience. So I'm all about that too.
Cool. Dang, I cannot stand the snow. Probably why I'm in California, but
Made the good choice. You truly did.
Yeah. All right, lastly, the tough question. Top 3 Canadian music artists.
Okay, Justin Bieber, hands
Ah,
down. Drake,
okay.
hands down. Shania
Okay.
Twain, hands down. I think we've got some good talent up north. We really do.
Yeah. No Weekend? Isn't he Canadian?
He is actually. I always forget about him. He's
Hmm.
good too, but I don't think he beats my top three.
Dang. Yeah, he's still getting his name out there, but it's all good.
Yeah,
All right.
someday.
Yeah. Cool. So you said already where you're from. Can you describe what your life was like before college?
Yeah, I would say it was a pretty, cookie cutter normal life. I grew up in a family of 5. So I have 2 younger sisters, and then we had a younger brother a little bit down the line. So turned into a family of 6, and we were actually homeschooled originally for elementary school. And then I think we wore our mom out. So she was like, you kids have to go to school. We got sent to school, and then did high school all within the same space, which was pretty important because we moved a lot in our younger years, which I think is why that homeschooling piece was, what made most sense for our family. So yeah, we settled once I got into my high school years, and then yeah, just went to high school, had extracurriculars, had a really solid group of friends, great church that I was involved in, and it was a pretty safe community overall.
Yeah. What was that transition like going from homeschool to public school?
Honestly, I know like the stereotypical response would be, it's so hard. I was a social outcast. It was just like, I was the awkward one, but it was so easy. I loved it. It was just like, I think the way that we were homeschooled kind of created a really open environment. So in the community I grew up in, homeschooling was a preferred way to school your kids. So there were tons of social groups. We were very, very socialized within that space. So I didn't find it difficult. None of my siblings found it difficult. It was just a nice transition into something that was like the movies or like TV shows. Like we were really excited to go to high school because it was like there's dances, there's football games, there's, just those things that as a homeschooler you wouldn't typically get. So we were amped about it. It was great.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All
Yeah.
right. So, did you picture yourself going to college when you were little?
100%. Yes. College was a really, really talked about topic in my family. All of my family members went to one university or college, is what we call it in Canada. They all kind of went to one university that's like uncles, aunts, cousins, parents, grandparents, like lineage I'm talking about. And so the conversation was always like, you will go to this college someday. And so that was always sort of the end goal or the expectation in a way of what we would work towards.
Yeah. Okay. Did you know what you wanted to study then at the time?
No, actually, I had no idea. I just thought, you finish high school, you go to university, and, in grade 11 and 12, as I was getting closer to, having to make that decision, I really started to evaluate hobbies, things that I love doing, what I saw myself doing with just skills that I had already fostered. And I ended up settling on fashion design, which was actually a program that wasn't available at this university. And as you can imagine, Canada is not a fashion industry capital. And so I had to sort of expand my horizons a little bit beyond the borders of the North.
Mm. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you said that college was a part of your family, like they've all been to college. How did you know that it would be the right path for you personally?
I don't honestly think I knew to think about anything different, honestly. And I didn't actually explore alternative routes for, education or even just building upon skills until I was actually 2 years into my degree. And that was where I pivoted from doing, the typical 4-year college program, graduate, start working. I took a detour for 2 years, and that's where obviously we met. And I did Bible college for 2 years as just an opportunity to take a bit of a pause to really consider the life choices that I had made up to that point, which really was around like, am I getting the right education? Is this truly the field that I should be in? Is this what I really am called to do? And so I use that time to really get answers to those questions because, again, just growing up in a household where you're constantly, reminded that education is the right path. Um, yeah, again, you like don't really always consider the alternative routes. So I ended up deviating from that 2 years into my degree program, but then I did come back and I finished my 4-year university degree after going to Bible college.
Yeah, that was a fun time for sure.
Yeah,
S-
I loved it. Time of our lives, eh?
Yeah, you know. So, how did that experience affect the rest of your college experience back uh, countryside?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for me, taking that time out before completing my degree gave me perspective. It gave me a minute to actually decide what I wanted to do if I was to finish this degree and how I would actually apply not just my skill sets and my passions within the fashion industry, but how to apply my faith in that space as well. And so for me, it really solidified purpose of being in this industry and helped me realize that it wasn't just, because I liked clothes and I liked designing things. It was for a deeper reason than just, the skills and the passions that I had kind of, harvested in on during my younger years.
Yeah. Okay. So looking back, what do you wish you learned in high school if you could learn like anything more?
Anything?
Yeah.
Honestly, from like an adulting stance, finances. I really, really, really feel like high school just sort of misses the boat on that. And if I had it my way, I think introducing finances when you're in elementary school, like when you're first getting an allowance, should be something that you start to introduce to younger kids. Things like, what's a stock? What's a bond? How much should I save versus spend versus invest? I personally didn't have that outlet, and I actually haven't honestly had that outlet ever until I went seeking that out myself later in life. So I think finances are a huge piece that really affect a large area of your life, and that is something that a lot of high schools are completely missing from their curriculum.
Yeah. Are there any good financial habits you can share with everybody?
You know what? I feel like I'm still in the process of figuring out, the best kind of financial piece. I know for me, one of my goals out of college was like, okay, now that you're adulting, you need to kind of have a safety net in case things don't work out. As an international worker in the US, like things are always kind of 50-50, and you don't know exactly, if your job will be the most secure, if you're going to be the most valuable asset, just because you do come at a bit of a higher cost. So making sure that you have enough to land on while you, might have lost opportunities and are looking for something in the meantime. Having that safety net is so crucial. And then also just figuring out, how can I grow the money that I make? And so I've been learning a lot about how to invest wisely. And it's been, really exciting in kind of a nerdy way to just understand that entire part of life that I just haven't had visibility to before. So I think, first of all, having a safety net, and then figuring out how to invest if that's something that you think is best for you.
Awesome. Cool. So looking back on everything, can you recall a season of having to learn new skills or adapt to your environment to survive?
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest moment that stands out to me was during college. I had entered into this fashion degree major. I had lightly tampered in high school with everything that sort of involved fashion design. So sewing, draping, sketching, but I was by no means an expert. And in the program, everyone was coming in at a different level, and I just felt so behind the curve to everybody else. And so I had to put in the extra hours. I got terrible grades for the first few semesters. I hustled hard, watched all the learning courses online and the books, and met with professors over and over again. And I really felt like I could never catch up. And honestly, I just miraculously did. I don't know how, but that hard work eventually paid off. And I honestly needed that, because I think if it hadn't have been a case of like improving, I probably would have been kicked out of college. No question.
Yeah.
So,
Hey,
yeah.
C's get degrees.
That's what they say. I know. I was always striving for the C, and I was like an A student before, which, doesn't really mean anything when you're in high school versus university, but that was it.
Cool. So what's been the most practical way you've put to use everything that you studied so far?
Yeah, I guess what it really is boiled down to is my job. I work right now as a retail strategist, so I'm kind of like a consultant that gets to work really embedded in different fashion retailers. And so all of that knowledge, and then some, even down to the clubs that I attended in university and the internships that I had, literally I've used every single piece of it. And so it's been a great learning curve in that, like, every single block has built upon another block and has really paved way for a just seamless transition into the working world. And within that, I'm kind of lucky right now in that my job gets to work with such a diverse portfolio of retailers that are all facing different kinds of struggles. So it's really opened up my eyes to not just for fashion retail, but just in the business world, how to navigate situations, how to strategically consult different kinds of problems, and to really help steer business away from disasters. So that's what I've been doing. And all of that started with even the most basic of the basic courses in university. So all were building blocks, definitely.
Cool. So, what's been the biggest roadblock or hurdle you've had to face since graduating college?
Yeah. This is definitely a big one as an international working in the US. And I kind of touched on this earlier, but you always have to work a little bit harder, and you're always going to be the first on the chopping block because you do come at a cost. And when a company is sponsoring you for your visa, you have to extra negotiate that you are worth their money and their investment, and that um, ultimately, like, you are going to prove your value in the long run. And I think that's a conversation that's even spilled over into salaries and having your market value assessed. I know of a lot of international friends of mine working in the city. We are at the bottom of the totem pole on the paycheck, and you might be working tons more hours than your counterparts who are your verticals, but they they will never see that as an opportunity to pay you more, just because, again, you are at their expense and they are paying for your visa in order for you to be working here. So that has been a bit of a challenge, and something that I've learned to become a little bit more bold in addressing from the get-go, especially as there's like annual reviews. And now with COVID, I feel like this is just a conversation that people are having because they're curious about progression in a world that is looking a little bit different than what it was looking like even just 6 months ago.
Yeah. How do you find that balance of, since you say you have to work kind of twice as hard, but not letting work consume your life like completely?
I'm a workaholic, so I'm the worst person to ask about this. I really, really love working. I love seeing progress being made. And so for me, I have to be intentional to create space in my life that is allocated to friendships, to family, to, growing skill sets that you're not necessarily getting from work. And then also just time to chill and do things that I'm, really into and passionate about. So I think for me, a lot of it comes down to time management and making sure that, as much as work is so important and it is something that I enjoy, I do have to separate from that in order to be like my fullest and healthiest self.
Awesome. So, what's been the biggest surprise of adulthood so far?
I would say we have a lot of spare time as adults. And I think, I know it's like ridiculous, kind of like funny, but I think your entire life, you're always in, a system that someone else has sort of placed you in. Like, you're going through elementary school, you're going through high school, you eventually get into college and you have the choice to go there. But if you choose that route, you have all of these classes that you're meant to go to. And then there's homework. And then there's just life in general and hobbies that maybe parents have, signed you up for or whatever. And I think once you reach adulthood, you're kind of on your own. Like, and it's a great thing. It's great to figure out, okay, with all of this spare time that I'm not having to do assignments for, and I'm not having to do, something that someone else has enlisted me into, you get to decide, like, what do you want to invest your time into? And I think that has been the biggest gift of adulthood for me, is figuring out, okay, like, where my community can I invest my time? What kind of passions have I always had that I've never really had minutes to actually grow and to see if that's something that could lead to maybe like a new job or just a passion project down the line. So yeah, I think time has been the biggest gift of adulthood. And I know that won't last forever because, of course, you know, 20s, 30s, it's like a pretty sweet time. And eventually that'll probably change. But for now, I am riding on the wave of having so much extra free time on my day to day.
Yeah. Especially during COVID, I feel like there's a lot
Yeah,
of side hustles you can work on. Is there any side
totally.
projects you're up to?
You know what? Had kind of faltered away from doing designing just because of the nature of my work. And in New York, we're always commuting, we're always doing social things because we never sleep. And now that we're kind of forced inside and we have to sleep, I've been designing again for myself and working on a few fun projects there. And then I'm also preparing to go back to business school. So I'm in the process of studying for that too, which I have to say the COVID environment is like a studier's dream. It is so quiet. We have so many minutes. Everything's just, 5 steps away. So I've been definitely chipping away on that space too, which has been such a gift to have these minutes just to devote to going through algebra and, data sufficiency and things that are not exciting at any cost, but they're really valuable to use this time for. So I've been doing that quite a bit too.
Dang, you know how to learn math like online? That's pretty hard. That's like a skill.
I know, it's pathetic. I feel like such a nerd after work. It's like, okay, now switching to learn math with my online math tutor. This is
Oh,
so embarrassing, but
wow.
someone's got to do it. So here we are.
Nice. That's cool. All right. So, can you explain again what you do for work? I guess in
Yeah.
more detail.
Definitely. So, again, my title is a retail strategist, and what I do is I work as a consultant, and I predominantly work with fashion retailers and other consulting firms across the entire globe at this point. And we work specifically with different teams embedded into the entire fashion industry supply chain. So we'll be working with people like merchandisers and designers, product developers, trend teams, marketing teams, as well as any kind of communication teams. I'm gonna cough.
You're good. Go get some water. I should put on my mask for that part, but too late.
Oh my gosh. I should probably cut that out. Oh, sorry. My bad. Oh my
You're
gosh.
good.
You ever get that when you're just like talking and like it
Hmm.
attacks you?
Yeah,
That's me.
it's the perfect timing. Yeah, cool.
Mm,
All
okay.
right.
Do you want me to say that one again?
Sure.
I feel like there needs to be a blooper reel. This is so awkward. Just a second.
Yeah, go for it. Do what you gotta do.
Okay, I think I'm okay.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Cool. Well,
Okay, I'll start. Do you want me to start from the top with what I do for work?
sure. And if I've edited that out, then yes, we're back here with Bryony, and she was explaining what she does for work.
Yeah, so I work right now as a retail strategist, which basically is a merge role between a consultant and a strategist. So I work with different teams across the entire fashion industry supply chain. So merchandisers, product developers, trend teams, concept teams, design teams, marketing teams, pricing teams, analysts, the whole shebang. So we work really strategically to make sure that they are informing their decisions with data. So my company provides data solutions, and I pretty much go in and present solutions, work with them to embed data into their processes, and creatively help them figure out ways that aren't so feely to make final decisions. And I think something that's just so important to know is like fashion is a pretty archaic industry. It's a little bit old school. They're adjusting to technology. They're adjusting to new ways to be more efficient. And so our goal is to just help them in that process and help them really get on the cutting edge with decisions instead of being so tied to their calendar year and so tied to the way that it's been done for, decades at this point, so that they can kind of meet 2020 or hopefully 2021 if they last until then, with lightning speed and with the best business book they've ever seen. So that's a little bit about what I do and how that looks. It's just a typical kind of consulting job where we have tons of different projects going on every single week. They last months, some last a couple of days, and they're all very diverse and intense. So lots of presentations, lots of being interrogated on Zoom calls these days, just to make sure that they know the market that they're playing in the best, and to make sure that they're aligning their decisions to something that's factual and not just aloof and forecasted and whatnot.
Yeah. And you're saying you're trying to, or the fashion industry, it's a bit traditional and you're trying to keep it up to date. Are there ways that you personally stay up to date on what's trending? Like me personally, I find I'm only like 27, but it's kind of hard to keep up with everything at this point. But do you have any tips?
I agree with that wholeheartedly, actually. There's so many things that are pushed in front of us that relate to trends, and it's hard to kind of pick out the ones that fit your personality, fit your style and whatnot. I think for me, just because I'm in the mix of data, I'm constantly looking at what is the products that consumers are reacting to right now and what's flying off the shelves. I just am in the data so deep that that's sort of my trend compass, if you will. And so I'm not like looking at magazines or blogs or influencers at this point. I really do just rely heavily on what data is saying, which is again like so nerdy, but it's just the world that I'm in right now. And so especially in this era where it's like we haven't had fashion weeks just due to COVID, and there hasn't been much movement in that sphere just because the world is changing and we're having to figure out how to digitalize everything. So data has been my go-to. I love looking at what has been selling out specifically during this COVID time. It's so interesting to see like what different consumers are buying in different parts of the world and the trends that are kind of growing out of this working from home period. So yeah, data, that's where I go.
Nice. Yeah, it makes sense for sure. So looking back on 2020, I'm sure we both can agree it's been a crazy year. What are the first couple of things that come to mind when you think of 2020?
Yeah, I think anticipation would be the first one, because I think all of us went into this new decade with big dreams, big ideas of what it would be. Anticipation would be the first. Isolation would be the second. I know, obviously, due to COVID, it's like everything's shut. I don't have to go into detail there. And personally, I've been living solo, and I usually live with people, but just because of isolation in New York City, a lot of people have fled. So it's been kind of a reflective time in isolation ultimately. And I'm actually quite grateful for it. I think the first few weeks adjusting to just being solo was a little bit abrupt, and I think God used that time to really bring up things that I was kind of pushing to the back of my heart, and we had some really honest conversations during that time. And so I think as much as it's like we came into this year with anticipation, there was isolation, there's also been, I think, just a time for reflection as well. And I think a lot of people would agree with that sentiment. And then finally, I think listening. I think just due to everything going on in the world, I think the fact that people are inside, the fact that there's movements happening left, right, and center, we're forced to listen. And I think for the first time, we're not too busy to do that, to actually put a pause in our day and to actually have a conversation, hear someone's story, listen to, different ways that you can help in different ways that you can diversify your knowledge and your understanding, I think listening would also be another key point for 2020.
Dang, you're on point. Reflection and listening for sure. That's very
Totally.
big. But
Yeah.
you're talking earlier, I guess, before we start recording about your church and your experience there. And diversity has been a big theme we've been talking about lately on the show. Can you tell us your whole experience with your church that you're going to?
Definitely. So I go to a church called Trinity Harlem, which is in Harlem in New York City. And it's a fantastic church. It is birthed out of a church from Miami, and they also have a plant in San Francisco. But it's just a very gorgeous family of people who have just brought together so much of the community up in Harlem, which was really missing. A church that was here for the long haul and that was here to really do life on the day to day. And so it's been such an incredible opportunity to be involved there. It's fairly young. We're about 5 years in now. And yeah, it's just been the best part of living in New York City for me. It's opened up an entire world that I had always lived miles from. I typically, or originally, I should say, grew up, or I guess into adulthood, if you will. When I moved to New York, I was downtown, and then Harlem is all the way uptown. And it was sort of like that area of town that you're kind of told, like, it's dangerous. Be like aware when you go to Harlem. And then I ended up moving uptown, and church was so close to where I was living, and there was so much community in my area. And there was just something so contagious about the people there, and their hearts were so big, and I just immediately fell in love with it. So I've been going there for a while now, and on a whole, like, I am probably one of the only white people in that church, which has been a really interesting experience too. It's super diverse. Harlem on a whole is like one of the most diverse communities in North America. So it's been so fun getting to know about different cultures, to learn about different ideas and just things that, you know, people like myself wouldn't necessarily be privy to. So it's been an awesome experience.
Dang, that sounds pretty crazy. You want to give us what's two benefits to having diverse friendships?
I mean, I feel like I kind of just said it, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I just, again, like, your frame of the world just gets so much more, I don't know, it just gets larger just because you're getting introductions to new ideas, different kind of communication styles, different cultures, everything that that culture encompasses. I really think life is just more exciting when you have diverse friends. And I think, you know, who just wants to be friends with someone who's just like him? Like, that's so, so boring. And I think you really do learn when you have diverse friendships. And that's so important in developing as a full and complete human. So I'm all about having a variety of friendships. I'm so for it.
Awesome. You get a couple snaps for that. You know, I don't have sound effects yet, but those were snaps. Yeah.
I love that. It's fabulous.
Cool. So going back to fashion, what's one tip you would give to someone who's interested in going into that field of work?
Yeah, I would just say diligence is key. I think I've seen a lot of people throughout the industry over my 11 years now kind of being involved in this space in New York. And I have to say the ones that survive are the ones who have a very strong work ethic. And fashion, it might be perceived as a very glamorous and fun and glitzy job, but it is hard work, let me tell you. And it is gross work sometimes and dirty work and work that really no one should have to do. But if you're diligent and you're willing to put in the hard years at the beginning of your career, you will take off.
Nice. Real quick, your top three movies on fashion,
Oh my
fiction or
goodness.
nonfiction.
Oh wow. The Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah.
always. What else? Making the Cut. That's a new show. It's not a movie, but that's been pretty good. And then obviously Project Runway. I know people have mixed reviews about that, but I love it. I'm all about it.
Okay, cool, cool. I've only heard of one of those, but it's all good. I'll do my
It's okay,
homework.
Isaiah. You're
Yeah.
fine.
Cool. So, looking back, is your life where you thought it would be? And do you have any experiences that the audience can learn from?
Ooh. So surprisingly, yes. I honestly thought I would be a young professional worker in New York City when I was growing up. And although we had so many conversations about going off to university, I don't know why or like what formed this. And I've thought about this before, but I cannot get to the root of why I always pictured myself in New York just adulting. And here we are. So I have to say yes. I know a lot of people are like, oh, like when I turn 30, I want to be here. And this is where I imagined my life to be. But I can honestly say this is really where I thought I would be. So it's exciting. I guess I did kind of deviate from pure fashion design, and I'm now working a little bit in a little bit more of a different role as a consultant, but still working with fashion designers. So I kind of qualified as still kind of being a fashion designer in a way, just because all of those skills are still being tapped into, all of the knowledge that was gained. And, again, the love that I have for it is something that I still get to kind of hone in on and, continue to maintain. So yeah, that would be my first part. And then what was the second part of the question? You can
Uh,
edit that out too if you want.
no, you're fine.
Sorry.
Uh, do you have any experiences that the audience can learn from? Uh, I guess looking back through your work experience or college experience, it could be like a mistake or something you wish you could have done better or something that will help someone, I guess, get into your field of work.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier again, just be diligent, put your hand to the plow, like keep at it, and eventually all of your hard work and the sleepless nights and the gross tasks that you had to do, they will pay off. So just keep at it and stay diligent.
Awesome. Man, I'm doing a lot of top three questions today. I just noticed that's a trend, but it, who are your top three influencers in your life? They could be famous or not.
Oh, I have to bring it home to my family for this one. My mom, my dad, and my nana. So my mom is just the most hospitable woman, and I just admire her so much. She's my role model, and I want to be like her when I grow up. And then my dad has this insane work ethic, and he's super driven. And I think from like a personality stance, I just relate to him so much. And I've just seen everything that he's done from like providing for my family and laying the grounds for what hard work looks like. I owe that completely to him. And so definitely another influence. And then my nana, she just has the most insane life story, and she is such a woman of resilience, and I truly look up to her for everything that she stuck consistent with when her life wasn't incredibly easy and wasn't a dream. So they're, again, so close to home, but my top influencers, and I love them so much, and they're definitely a huge part of who I am and who my entire family has shaped up to be. So I would say those are my three for sure.
Cool. Shout out to the parents.
They did
Took
well.
awesome. So, any books, podcasts, or music that you recommend at the moment?
Yeah, totally. I'm a podcast junkie. And I don't go in the order of like what's hot right now. I'm not a trending podcast girl, so I'm kind of catching up on a few things. But one that I am loving right now is called Caliphate, and it's by a journalist named Rukmini Kalamaki from the New York Times. And she basically goes into ISIS territory and reports from the grounds there, and it's absolutely insane. And I think just so enlightening to hear about what's happening on the other side of the world when we're so obsessed with what's going on in our nows, and just taking a minute to really understand crises that are happening that we can be advocating for and that we should be more educated on. So Caliphate has been one. I also love The Daily, which is also from the Times. And that's by Michael Barbaro, but he just does like a quick 30-minute update on like the hottest news for the day. I've been taking a break from that just because the news has been heavy lately, so I'm
Hmm.
kind of just like taking a step back. And then for books, I have been reading this book called the Silk Roads, and it's essentially a history of the world. And I will go off about this book because I think it's fantastic, but basically it fills in the blanks to the history that we're taught in the Western world. So, we focus so much on like World War II and World War I, but like how did the world get to that place? That's what this book is about. So I have been geeking over that. I think it's so good, and would encourage everybody. Like I've already ordered 3 of them to give to people in my life.
Nice.
So that has been another one that I've been devouring lately.
Awesome. Any new skills you're learning in your COVID season?
I mean, besides math for business school, I started making sourdough bread. I don't know if that's a skill, but it's like incredible what you can do when you learn how to make sourdough bread. It's like I never need to go to a bakery again, and it's fantastic. It's like this beautiful artisanal loaf. So I'm actually quite proud about that. Yeah, it's been a lot of trial and error, but I'm happy with where it's gotten to at this point.
Cool. I think yeah, time flew by. I think we might end it on this question. That's cool with you. Um
Go for it.
if there or it's I guess it's a two-part question. So if there was one thing you could ask your future self, what would it be? And if there's one thing you could tell your high school self, what would it be?
Ooh, I like that. So one thing I would ask my future self, I'd be curious to know how the working life is going for you. I think, as women, you have to decide pretty early on, are you going to be the kind of person that really invests into working, or are you going to be the kind of person who sees themselves, potentially working, but also having a little bit more balance with kids and with family life? And for myself, at this point, anyways, I really do foresee myself going a lot more into business, and that being a really big part of my life going forward. So I'd be curious to know how that was going for myself, and if I wished I would have stayed more in that home space and more of that 50-50 chill with family, be a working woman space, or if I'd be happy to have pursued that full force. And then what would I tell my high school self? I don't think we talked about this, but I think in high school, and I guess just in younger years, you kind of create these timelines for yourself of where you want to be. And I think telling, like looking back at my high school self, I would just remind myself not to confine myself to specific timelines, and that goals that are met happen within the time that they happen, and that it's okay to miss meeting a specific life goal or crossing a certain milestone at a certain age or at a certain point in life. It's okay to deviate from the path that you set yourself on.
Awesome. Great tips for sure. Yeah, thank you for coming on the show. It's been cool.
Thanks
Definitely.
so much, Isaiah. This is awesome.
Yeah. And I feel like I just want to encourage you real quick. I feel like this verse is really on your life. It's Psalm 46:1. It's God is our refuge and strength and ever-present help in trouble. I feel like it's funny. I told you this a couple years ago back at Bible college, but it's really stayed with me. It's I feel like your leadership, it's really a safe space for others, and that it really is just like what God is doing. He's a refuge, he's a fortress. So you get to be that for other people. You get to be that safe space they come to when they're in trouble. But yeah, I feel like that's really on your life, and I'm glad that you love what you're doing. Just keep going.
Thanks so much. I love that. I'll never forget when you told me that.
Oh, awesome. I probably shouldn't have said it again then.
Hey, makes twice. I love it.
Yeah, for sure. But you got anything you want to promote at the moment? Website or anything or
Again, I would say get yourself a copy of The Silk Roads and listen to Isaiah's podcast, obviously.
Day. Okay, that works. Cool. Well, once again, thank you for coming on. Hope you have a good
Thank
night as
you.
well. Yeah,
Thanks, Isaiah. Take care.
you too. And for everybody else, until next time, as we're maturing, we're going to keep learning, stirring up, and chasing after what our Creator